It's Jeannie Ives. This is The Real Story. And, Pete Hegseth, he was on with Maria Bartiromo after being in Panama, kind of cutting a deal with them to take China out of the picture and put U.S. security interests in charge there again. Here's Pete Hegseth on Panama and what they're doing down there.
A robust and growing U.S. presence, right? You need to secure that key terrain. So Fort Sherman will reopen jointly with the Panamanians, a jungle school, and we're going to have a larger U.S. presence at the invitation of Panama, working with them to keep the communist Chinese out. If we can't use that waterway in a key contingency, then China has an advantage. Other presidents have allowed us, we've been sort of asleep at the wheel. President Trump has said we need to be serious about our own backyard. That includes a place like the Panama Canal. And I want to thank President Molino, a pro-Trump, pro-America president of Panama, who's sticking his neck out against communists whose influence was real there, Maria. We could see it. You could feel it. The communist Chinese want to control politicians. They're building infrastructure projects. They want to surveil. They want to take that canal. President Trump says, not on our watch, and we're fighting back.
That's unbelievable. And when I spoke with President Trump in an interview last month, he said that all the signage around the canal was all in Chinese. When you're going into it, it's all Chinese signs. When you're coming out of it, there's all Chinese signs. That was sort of one piece of color that indicates how dominant they've been.
Correct. They're building a tunnel underneath the canal they're paying for. What could that be used for? Surveillance of submarines, of ships, bridges over the top, cranes within. We flew by their cranes in that port. Antennas all over them. What are those used to do? We didn't see, by now, they're removing a lot of that signage, but removing signage is not enough. You've got to remove the insidious influence.
I bring that clip up because, as I left off at the last segment, I think part of the tariff war is really about the security of transit of goods and people throughout the world. And there's no way that we want China controlling any aspect of that, whether it's the Suez Canal or whether it's the Panama Canal, which are very strategic when it comes to moving lots of goods around. Well, somebody who knows a lot about this and has clued me in is somebody who lives right in my backyard, and her organization is there. But she started a business when she was 21. She was the youngest individual to ever receive a U.S. Customs broker's license. She started her business at age 22, Riley International, and she has clients that are from around the world. And so when Liberation Day hit on April 2nd, I know that her and her workers were sort of in a panic, not really understanding how to calculate many of the customs that they needed to for their clients. So she joins me now to give us more of a on-the-ground look at the tariff war that's going on right now and how it's impacted her business and her clients. Vicki, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Absolutely, Jeannie. How are you?
Very good.
Good. Yep. Good stuff. Well, yeah. So, Jeannie, I thought it would be good to just give an example to your listeners, just sort of set the stage of what. There's a lot of talk of, people hear these numbers like 30%, 50%, and they think that potentially the price of whatever they're buying is going to go up by that much, or there's just a lot of confusion. So what I did is I took a real life example of a retail item that's $100. So you go into Best Buy, you buy something for $100. The average duty rates without the activity that President Trump has put forth, anywhere between, say, 4 and 10%, 4 and really 8%. So I took the high end of that, 8%, on an existing tariff. So that would be a tariff cost of about $2.32, because the way that tariffs are calculated are not on the retail price, but they're on the price that that is paid for the goods when they're packed, ready to ship to the USA at the foreign supplier. So that number is considerably less, and you could call that maybe just under a third of that retail price. In fact, significantly under a third, probably about $29. And so essentially, the price of a retail item at $100 would go up about $10 to the U.S. consumer if all of the cost of that tariff was actually passed on to the U.S. consumer. And there's plenty of other negotiation levers that can occur. So I just think that's important to set the stage a little bit about how it actually impacts folks when they're buying things.
Well, that's really important because, of course, you had all those scare stories where some folks were out there as small business owners saying, because I wasn't able to get my stuff on the boat, now I have a $360,000 tax bill or tariff or customs bill because I requested all these supplies to come in and now I'm stuck.
Well, there's an element of that. I mean, if we take that example, of course, if we take that example, that $100 item, the tariff went from $2.32 up to about $12. So, if the margins are super thin, yeah, of course that can make an impact. But it really, it's really going to depend on, how much the margin is between the cost that you purchase it for overseas and the cost it then eventually gets sold at wholesale or retail. But that's a retail example, so.
No, that's a great example.
Worst case. Yeah. Probably worst case, right? So.
Right. And so how about my argument that much of this may have something to do, or maybe some of these tariffs are somewhat fair in light of the fact that we help secure trade routes for the rest of the world?
Yeah. So,
I'm sure customers don't see it that way, but I, as an American, see it that way, as an American taxpayer.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and as an American taxpayer, you have every right to look at it in any way, that makes sense for you. But the reality is that, our business has been fortunate to be in kind of a unique position where we export goods for our clients, and we also import goods for our clients. And a lot of the goods that we export out of the country tend to be for our clients in the U.S. who are sending them out for warranties. So you'll have an OEM manufacturer in the United States. They have a warranty issue, and then we send all the goods to various different countries on their behalf. And so in that capacity, what we get the opportunity to see is how other countries treat us when we import, and not just the tariffs or the VAT taxes, but also the non-monetary. And you've heard Trump bring this up, the non-monetary items. Now, let me just go on record to say I'm a free trader, but free and fair, right? Mm-hmm. So it's got to be free and fair. And let me touch back on your national security point. Yes, it's true. The U.S. is generally the one that's patrolling all the waters, and we're making sure that people are behaving themselves. That hasn't worked out too well with the Houthis, but I think we're trying to fix that now as well, certainly in recent weeks. But there's what I was referring to a minute ago was the reciprocal tariffs, that Trump's big board that he held up. There's a couple of other tariffs out there that, are directly pointed at two different topics, and one of them is national security, and there's a couple of items that are under that have separate tariffs. So you'll often hear this, the 25% tariff, that gets bantered around a bit. And that's a separate class of tariffs from these reciprocal tariffs. Yeah. And that's on things like aluminum and steel and auto parts. And obviously those things have to be made in this, we've got, I don't know, you probably know the population of the United States better than I do, but not everyone can be in the service business, right?
That's right. No, we need to make stuff. Yes.
You got to make stuff here. And this country has done so well because of innovation. We're innovators. We've done that, for our existence. And innovation doesn't just happen by engineers. It happens on a manufacturing line where somebody goes, well, we could do this way. So,
yeah.
Hey,
and Vicki,
from a national security, yeah.
I am completely running out of time. I would love to continue the conversation. I got to have you back on because this is a really important topic, and there's a lot more that I wanted to discuss. I just didn't fit it in this time. But thanks so much for your great example about what's going on in the real world.